A bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 299 with Stephanie Scott, Fresh Perspectives, artist, designer, Ontarian, Aries. Join the team as we get to know Stephanie, a flavorful creative who has tailored her passion and stylishly applied it across mediums from murals to gazettes, giving the Great White North a dash of panache. And I'm really curious, Jim, what that term
Panache.
means in your
Panache.
definition.
Panache is Stee's style.
In French, it means something different, but good. I go with that term. Nice.
Word. So welcome to the episode. Thanks for coming here, Stephanie. Something we do at the beginning of these is definitely. So we'll get into how I stumbled on you and stuff. Raphael does know you in a second, but something we do at the beginning of these is to correspond the major arcana. I don't know if I'll be doing this after the 300th, so this might be running out the system, but it's 299, which reduces down to 2 ultimately. 9 is 18, 2 is 20, 20 is 2. It is the High Priestess. I offer up the mysteries of life. This is about trusting your intuition, listening to your inner guides, understanding yourself better, listening to the music of the universe, and allowing creative ideas to germinate. Raphael, what dost thou have?
Always stumbling across my cards. This is, if I see it correctly, oh yes, that's actually my card. That's the Princess of Fire. So it's the Princess of Wands. Younger, passionate, and active woman, brilliance, courage, beauty, sudden in anger or love, desire or power. It's the 26/8. Yeah, the page of Wands, bringer of new creative energy.
Spunk. She's the cheerleader of the rave, essentially. So it's funny though, because you do have an Aries sun conjunct your North Node and Jupiter loosely, so it's not terribly surprising that that's coming up. But for you, Stephanie, between the High Priestess card and that Princess of Wands card, was there anything that syncs or pops resonantly for you?
I would consider those both, from my perspective, pretty positive cards to have. So I wasn't expecting that, to be honest.
Oh, come on. It's a magical mystery tour.
Coincidence, magic, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's almost like what I could be, not so much how I currently feel, if that makes sense. So I don't know. It seems aspirational rather than reflective of me at the moment.
I'm pretty sure Chiron and the North Node. Say that again?
Maybe I'm just oblivious to these things, oblivious to my own capabilities.
It's funny because your sun is conjunct Chiron right now and the North Node essentially. For everybody, it's at 16 degrees. I don't know how into astrology you are, or tarot or anything. We kind of just throw the spices on the pizza and say, eat up. But basically, you're going through a real moment of kind of declarative self-actualization more than most, because your sun and your North Node are conjunct the North Node. So you're like, am I here doing the right thing? I don't know if I'm being, like kind of what you're saying. You're just like, oh, these cards are resonant, but I don't know if I'm fitting the boots or whatever. And it's like, you're totally the boots. That's why they popped. But yeah, you're going to have a moment. I mean, not to sound dour or anything, but it's like, you're going to have some, you see the eyes are on the prize, but you're like, do I have the juice to get there? Like kind of mode.
Okay.
So anyway.
That seems extremely accurate.
It tends to work that way. So I stumbled upon you one day. There had been a long period of me being on hiatus on social media and stuff for a while, and Andreas has a show. I think it was Canadians only. I don't know why he asked me to come, because I was like, I'm the only one.
Not many of us out here.
Right? Well, it depends on the territory. But I saw. I think we talked, or I think Raphael was even there. I forget what the show is called. Probably like MK Ultra Canada style or
It
something like
was
that.
MK Canada.
There you go. There you go.
Yes.
That's why I was like, I don't know why I'm here. But in any event, I was like, yo, you're cool. What's your art about? And then you showed me, and I was like, you got to come on the podcast. Hence, you're here. I'm an art history
Mhm.
dropout. Love all things cool, and
You-
you've definitely got.
so
Are you dropped out?
I'm a 2-time art school dropout.
We will get into that. We will get into that because we're going to open up the Lotus here. But that's how I stumbled upon you. So I'm curious if Raphael remembers that. I mean, I don't know if he remembers that episode. He seemed like he might, like a dream. He recollected you sort of.
It's like a dream.
It was like a
It's all
year
like
ago
a dream.
now.
Yeah, it was about a
Yeah.
year ago.
Mhm.
It's been a hot
Um,
minute. Like I said, I fucking
Yeah.
In-N-Out burger here. So I'm like, oh yeah, come on. And then I disappeared, and then here we are again.
all good.
Life
The year
happens.
has flown by. Life does happen. Oh my.
So out of curiosity, we can do it now or later, I guess. But how do you know Andreas?
Oh, very randomly.
Internet
Through
stuff.
through a mutual Instagram friend, a fellow artist. He actually builds furniture. His name's Stoops. He lives in Australia, and wicked furniture. Very, very talented man. But yeah, it was just like a random thing where we were sharing kind of like channels that we liked that talked about current events and whatnot, and he sent me Andreas, and I had never heard of him. I didn't know that he was on like Timcast or anything like that.
I still don't know what
So
that is. I mean, I think it's a big deal, but it's like I never listened to it. I don't know him through
I mean,
that.
I don't
I
want to
introduced.
say critical.
Well, yeah, I don't know him, so it's like I can't. I know that whole balloon kind of popped or something. I know Andreas through other means. And then when we started this podcast up, Raphael was getting into Tartaria or was, so I was like, oh, you need to talk to Andreas. And then I kind of social cross pollination occurred, and now many things have occurred since. So okay, so yeah, small world, digital kind of reality. I get it.
Yeah.
We can touch back on that later, but
All
let's
right.
roll all the way back. I'll take a deep breath. I'll drink some water. I'm a little hyped
I know.
after
I need
running.
to breathe. I get
We don't
nervous.
know you. I don't know you for shit. I have your chart. We can kind of reference it.
Yeah, we can reference your child while Jim is
Okay.
stuck.
I thought that was on
Don't
my
worry
end.
about it.
Like, oh crap.
I'm sure he'll be back in a second. So I almost don't want to dash forward because I know the first thing Jim would be asking would be, to start from the very beginning, where you've been brought up, or anything relevant as to your cultural upbringing or your education. That's where we usually start.
Yeah. Very Canadian upbringing.
What does that mean?
Bland. I don't know. I don't want to sound so critical of Canada. A lot of wonderful things have come out of Canada, but just very, very like nice.
Oh yeah, really? So is it true what they say?
Sweet upbringing, at least in my family. My family's very Canadian. I would consider very Canadian in that we're like kind of reserved, orderly, polite, extremely polite. There's not a lot of like passionate energy, but there's a lot of like calm, steadfast energy in my family. And that's what I would consider that to be kind of a Canadian thing, especially because we don't have much strong cultural roots. Like my mom's side like they came over to the United States centuries ago and then made their way up to Canada. And then, as I mentioned in the green room, my dad's side is a mystery. So I'm very much a product of where I've grown up.
That's what's up. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
That's all right.
No, dude. Well, you started talking about your heritage, so I'm like, I think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
So yes, you can keep going down genetics. Although, have you ever done it? You clearly haven't done it like a 23andMe or whatever.
No, I'm not comfortable with that.
I hear that. So it's like, I mean,
DNA.
yeah, it's like you guys don't need to clone me every time soon. All right, so you can be as verbose or as brief as you want, but kind of talk about the culture and the reality tunnel you kind of popped out in. Up in Canada, up in Waterloo, I think. But yeah, like how many siblings do you have? What kind of cultural background are you coming from? We'll get to where you are now eventually. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just kind of saying it. A kind of a very Canadian cultural upbringing. But very sweet parents. My dad is very artsy. He was a graphic designer and an artist like his whole life. And my mom, sorry if I'm not talking loud enough. I'm like,
I hear you. You're good.
there's like this in between state where my voice can't.
We can hear you just fine, and if it's really relevant, I can even amplify your voice digitally right here. But no,
The Wizard of
I think we
Oz.
can hear you fine.
Okay. I have noise canceling headphones on too, so I can't fully tell how high my volume is. But anyway, so yeah, very supportive parents. My mom would be supportive of like whatever I do. So um, me like following a creative path, like learning at a young age that I was interested in art. They were very supportive of that. So just kind of nurtured that path for me.
Was there like a specific branch of style that your dad was doing with graphic design? I mean, was it more like letterhead stuff or, imaging?
He was doing a lot of like business to business stuff, so very different from what I do. He did, I think, some illustrations. I don't know. It's in part of his portfolio. I'm not sure if he's the one responsible for them though. But he did like a lot of catalogs for computer parts. So I remember like they were all over the house growing up, and it was just this like bizarre looking, machinery or whatever. These very like technical components that he would just beautifully photograph and do the layout design. And he was doing web design back in the early days. So he was like super ahead of the curve and very techy for a long time. Like he had one of those headset phones that, like in the 90s, that you'd only really see in movies.
Like
Or,
blank check or something. It's like,
yeah,
those were more like cell phones, but yeah, I hear what you mean. Like kind of like telecommunication things.
yeah, I just remember like anytime friends would come over, and he had a bunch of computers too, just because it's was what he did. And my dad holds on to a lot of things, so even if they weren't in use, they were still there. Um, so yeah, friends would come over and just be like stunned by all these computers, and my dad walking around with his little headset, and um, yeah.
Ordering pizza like a fucking futuristic man he is. It's so. I mean, granted that he clearly had his fingers on tech and maybe the cutting edge of things.
Mhm.
And you were saying your mom's sweet. Was she at all
Yes.
like creative and like that, or is it totally different kind of animal?
I think my mom has the capability of being creative. I think she never really went down that path. She's very orderly though. She is totally the rock. But I think a good example would be like my mom is like Marge Simpson. Just picture Marge Simpson minus the blue hair. Like
The
that's my
beehive.
mom. Yeah.
That's what's up. All right, and
Yeah.
hopefully she has a more aesthetically pleasing voice. Jesus,
Oh
Mars
yes.
Simpson sounds gravelly and shit.
Yeah,
So,
aside from the beehive and the voice.
word approximately accurate. In
Yeah.
terms of just steadfast like nurturance and kind of support role, because
Mhm.
Homer, let's be real, he's a nice guy, but
He
uh,
has his flaws.
yeah, he is the flawed hero for sure. So, what kind of like were they giving you worldviews? Like, were you raised a Christian, or were you just kind of it's like believe what you want? Like, how did that roll?
No, we would dabble in church. We'd occasionally go, um, but it was more so when we'd go visit family. Like my dad grew up in a Christian family, um, so we would go and we'd visit his parents. Um, but my mom didn't grow up with any sort of religious foundation. But I would say she is like the most Christ-like person. So it's interesting to me how you don't really need the framework of religion to
To grok
manifest
what's
that.
happening. Yeah,
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 yeah.
I hear you. I'm just always curious because we just had somebody actually from Vancouver who was like, actually, you'd probably like her Bliss,
Yes.
Prima. She was
I
like, my
started, I
parents were
started
hippies.
watching that. I didn't get all the way through.
Oh, word. Well, then you kind of get it. Like she smoked weed and shit at like 5 or something, and it's like, okay,
That's
that's not
intense.
quite. Yeah, I mean, I'm not judging, but that's rare. That's not typical, or maybe it was even younger. In any event, I just try to get a
Yeah.
bearing on the cultural kind of zeitgeist that you are in because that tends to color the stained glass that you are to some
Mhm.
degree, even if it's trauma and you're removing yourself from the scene. So what was? Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister, a
And is
younger
she
sister.
cool?
Oh, she's so cool.
You get on? I don't know.
She's the coolest.
Cool. That's what's up.
Yeah. She's like, she's into rock climbing. It's funny because she like knows construction. Like she can build so much, yet she's also like an incredible ballet dancer. Like she's just so skilled across so many things. And you can go on a hike with her and she'll be able to identify like every plant in the forest and know its medicinal purposes.
So
You
you
should
want
have
to
her
be?
on the show.
I probably will. Probably will. So when shit hits the fan, you're just
Yeah.
like, "What can we eat? These acorns won't kill us, right?"
Yeah, you
Kind of
want
stuff like
her
that.
when it hits the fan.
That's what's up. All right. So when did you start tapping into your creative capabilities? I mean, was it from the very early age, you're like, MC Eschering out and making stencils, or like, what's the deal? Like, when did you start realizing,
Yeah.
okay, I love organizing ideas and creating?
hmm I mean, as long as I can remember, but there was one specific instance where it kind of like clicked. And it was, I must have been about 4 years old, and it was Valentine's Day, and I got a Valentine's card with Tweety Bird on it. And I'm not particularly a fan of Tweety Bird, but there was just something about like seeing this character, like this TV cartoon character, out of the typical context I was used to seeing them that really fascinated me. And I was like, I need to reproduce this. So I just remember like sketching it out on paper with crayon, whatever, right? Like sitting on the kitchen floor, trying to redraw this Tweety bird. I just remember the eye, that like shape of the eye, and then how it repeats inside to form his iris and his pupil. Um, so that was like the first
Now that you
kind
say
of,
that, I see it and I'm like, oh, it's so simple. It's obvious. It's just kind of a repetition of motif, but
yeah,
I wouldn't have thought that at four for sure. So it's funny because as a kid, I would like trace over shit, and it's
yeah.
like, oh, were you straight up just doing your own thing or tracing?
Yes. I didn't trace much. I remember tracing stuff when I was like older, maybe 10 or so, just because it felt like I could just kind of disconnect a little bit and it just felt relaxing.
Mhm.
But then there was that other part that was like, it's not real art. Um,
I'm just echoing them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, uh, but no, it was pretty much my own thing from the beginning. I was really into cartoons.
Name some.
Really, well, Looney Tunes. Like Looney Tunes was the big thing. I was obsessed. And it was always like, oh, I'm gonna go be an animator. I thought that's kind of the path I'd go down. And then I realized what goes into animation, and I'm like, I don't know if I have that patience. I
Whole
mean,
lot
I
of
do. I
flipping
know now that I
cells.
do, but yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna
So
water.
do your thing. I'm curious. Looney Tunes is a broad universe. Was it like Tasmanian Devil or Marvin the Martian or Bugs? Like, was
No,
there an
I
element?
so to go back to Tweety, I loved Sylvester,
Okay.
and so I wasn't particularly a fan of Tweety because he's, you know,
Nemesis.
yeah, in
Yeah.
opposition. And I didn't like the whole cutesy act.
Hmm.
I found it obnoxious.
It is.
So and
I hear
Sylvester, he was like the underdog, so I was rooting for him. But
you. Never happened. I don't think. I don't think he ever caught it. It's kind of like
no.
the Wile E. Coyote situation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. Even that. See, maybe you weren't raised religious, but like these are programs or paradigms where it's like there's oppositional reality, and this guy, the underdog will never win kind of stuff. I'm not
hmm
saying much. I don't need to go on a cultural diatribe about that, but it seems that we absorb so much. So this is kind of why I ask these questions, because I know what your art looks like now, and I'm like, how did the acorn become the tree? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Were there any? I mean, Looney
Mostly.
Tunes came out. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, my art, the art that, well, firstly, my art that's online right now is old. I have not had the
Oh.
time to add a lot of my new projects to that. Um, we might get into this more later because it's just the reality of running your own business, that there's not enough time for everything. And a lot of my art is client work. So it tends to be, there's a corporate tint to it. Much of it is created for somebody else or for a specific purpose. So, again, we can get more into this later, but I just wanted to preface it by saying that. it doesn't represent the full breadth of my capabilities.
Hard noted, duly noted. So, but it's still good shit. So everybody should check out her
Thank you.
stuff. It's fascinating. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not. How would I put it? Well, we'll get into it later. So, like I was saying, the Looney Tunes universe is kind of not older. I think it came out in the 60s or 70s more. Or is
No,
it
those
always up to
characters have
date?
been around since what, the 40s?
Okay, even
Maybe
earlier, yeah, like World War II era,
basically,
yeah.
All I can say is they replayed that until the at least mid-90s, even in Europe,
yeah.
as if there was nothing else even in existence. I don't know what. So yeah,
They're great cartoons though, and the backgrounds are beautiful.
High art. Yeah.
There's an account I follow on Instagram that's just strictly the backgrounds to cartoons. A lot of Looney Tunes. Maybe actually it might be specifically focused on Looney Tunes, but they're stunning. The amount of work that would go into creating something that would just flash by in a second, it's breathtaking.
It's cool that you note that because I've always I'm a musician more and
Mhm.
conversational whatever, and I've always looked at things almost like that, where it's like the background animation, the midground, and the foreground. I mean, these things are necessarily interacting, but like the work that goes in, it's not one big old thing. And as you're saying it, I mean, I don't know the artist's name or group of artists or whatever, but it kind of reminds me of Fantasia a little or something. It's very stylized, kind of
Yep,
deco, surreal, but like nature like aware and practical. It's not like fantasy.
definitely.
It's not like Yes albums where it's like, oh my god, I'm on mushrooms. If you know the band Yes,
Yes,
um,
yes, I know. Yes.
that word Yes squared.
Yes.
So yeah, the Looney Tunes thing. I guess like we were saying, because now that I'm thinking about it, there was like propaganda in it, like with Hitler, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah, there's a
totally
lot that
dated.
has been kind of hidden or just,
Forgotten.
you know,
It's like
yeah, yeah.
we don't want to talk about that.
Doesn't make it into the TV compilation.
Did you get into Animaniacs?
Definitely, yes. That was my
I mean,
era.
that's the 2.0,
I
X-Men,
even have,
Batman.
yeah, I pulled out a book today. I've got a bookmark in it of Wacko. He was my
Yes.
favorite.
The one with the,
Um,
hat, I think?
yes, and
Oh, yeah. He sounded
around that
like
time,
Ringo.
he
Oh,
did,
and
yes. Um, and I used to mimic his style. I wore a backwards red hat for a long time, and then would switch it up to different ones. But he inspired that.
the
So yes,
Wacko Patent.
I was into Animaniacs. I watched a lot of television. I watched The Simpsons from a very very early age. My parents were pretty relaxed about what I watched, which is good and bad.
It's good. My parents wouldn't even let me watch The Simpsons. My dad let me
Yeah,
sneak it every now and then, but I was coming from fundamentalist Christians, so I envy you in a way where it's just like, we could do what we want.
yeah. Simpsons was fine. I don't think that there were just other programs I watched that I don't think I should have been watching at a young
Like
age.
what?
But oh, like Married with Children.
Yeah, that's
That
not
was
necessarily
one of my
content for like
favorite shows when I
5-year-olds.
was, yeah, when I was really little. And I think adults just figured, oh, she doesn't really know what's going on. But there's a lot of like sexual content in that and a
Yeah.
lot of just like warped messages. Very,
Well, it's
I
like The
don't know.
Simpsons, but like cracked out. It was cliches of like the 50s kind of
Yeah.
housewife husband dynamic or whatever, like, whatever that is, kind of like I go to work and I hate my job. She's at home, but she doesn't. Marge is actually a better homemaker, clearly, than the other lady. I
Marge
forget
is
her
a
name.
wonderful homemaker.
The other
Peg.
one, Peg. Yeah, I think she did all right, but she was clearly like jazzercise, like Vegas hooker or something, or you know what I mean. I didn't really watch that show.
Hmm. You
And
didn't
anyway,
miss out on anything.
no. The X Files, you were into that?
A little bit. Um, I kind of missed a lot of that though. I remember watching it a bit when it came out. I was always intrigued by content like that, but it would definitely infiltrate my brain and cause a lot of paranoia.
Fragile eggshell mind, getting into it.
Yeah,
I just
like,
considering your rabbit holes that you're into now, if you're into Andreas' stuff and stuff,
oh
history
yeah,
resets. I'm like, you're basically into the X Files now, but you're an adult.
yeah,
Essentially,
true.
like when you're like, I'm not going to give away my DNA. It's like this sounds like an X Files episode or
Oh,
something.
I think
Something
that's a pretty practical concern though.
now, yeah, I think there's definitely a
Yeah,
time when it might not have been thought of as raw data to wield however people want to use it.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so I know we're hanging out on the TV shows of childhood or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
just curious. So you started kind of getting into art, doodling a little more. Um,
Mhm.
what were your skills and interests outside of art growing up? Or like your sister was, you were saying, into ballet and nature. Like, what were
Yeah,
you doing? Like
yeah.
playing in mud puddles or watching Audrey Hepburn and wishing to be her? What was your
No.
situation?
No, it's funny you mentioned Audrey Hepburn too, because recently I've put on a list to watch more of the films that she's been in because I haven't really seen many. She's a fascinating person though. But anyway, art was my main interest.
Hmm.
Perhaps it's very one-dimensional of me. I just wanted to be alone in my room and just draw. Like I'd have like a stack of just scrap paper, you know, the opposite side of grocery lists or whatever, and I would just draw whatever I felt like. So there wasn't really. I was interested in animals. I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with being interested in the types of cartoons that I liked, where animals were the protagonists. But I don't know. I was pretty antisocial, pretty introverted.
I'm surprised we got you on the podcast. It's like we're gonna pull you out of your
Yeah.
shell. So
Like
I won't keep
I,
harping on
I got interested in
animations and
more
stuff.
stuff through like adolescence and whatnot. If we're just talking about kind of the
Like Far
immediate
Side and Calvin and Hobbes and stuff like
yeah,
that.
definitely. I remember Calvin and Hobbes intrigued me, but I didn't get it like when I was really little. And it seeming like a grown-up comic. Like I almost felt naughty if I would read it in the paper or something. Um, and yeah, Far Side, Gary Larson is brilliant. Yeah.
Genius. Like literally, I would rent those books from the library and just like read them, and like I think that has a level of to do with why I think the way I do. Straight up, it programs one to see things different. I mean, everything like Bummer of a Birthmark with like deer stuff. He just had a very twisted but like light. It
Yes,
wasn't
it's not
like
dark.
dark.
Um,
It was appropriate, I guess, is for lack of a
yes.
better term. Raphael, do you know about the Far Side in Europe? Do you guys?
I
I
was just
have to
looking
think you
up
know
this
what Far Side
other
is.
thing,
Holy
whatever
shit!
Calvin something, but
Calvin and
Calvin
Hobbes.
and Hobbes.
yes, this I've seen. I would never have.
It's basically an imaginary friend with a kid and his like antics.
All right.
Or it's not an imaginary friend, it's a stuffed animal, the tiger, and it's like
It
here is
is.
like from first
Yeah.
perspective.
And Far Side, like
They're
Far
getting into
Side
like
or the Far Side, or how is it
FAR.
spelled?
FARSIDE.
The Far Side. There's compendiums. I mean, this guy used to. I don't know if it was newspaper based or it seems like it was kind of like the back of newspapers for a while.
Yeah.
Then he kind of kicked off for a national level
But
of
isn't the
awareness.
guy who
Became a
made this like
cult.
super famous number one, how should I say that? Republican comic
Satirist?
Oh,
guy
are
now?
you?
Is that the
No, are
same
you
guy?
thinking of Dilbert?
Okay, okay.
What's his
Because
name? Scott.
I love how you guys are hacking like little
Scott
Matrix people. I'm like, I
Adams.
don't know. I know Scott
all
Adams,
Yeah.
right.
right?
I mean, unless Gary Larson is too. I don't know. I thought he was kind of out of the spotlight.
I think he might be dead,
What?
but I could be tripping on that. I know Charles Schultz died recently, more
Yeah.
recently.
No, he's still
But
alive. According to Wikipedia, he's
yeah.
73. All right.
Gary, shout out Gary. You're hilarious. Raphael, you need to go do yourself a favor. I don't think there's a library that would house these books necessarily in German in Austria, but maybe it's that big. I mean, it's a big deal, and they're hilarious. They will make you feel good about. I mean, sometimes things can get heavy and weird, and it's like, oh my god, between politics and just being human, and it can be very challenging. And these things
Okay, so
are just the
I mean,
absurd. It's
if I
like
was
goddess
crazy into
comic.
American something, I would know of him for sure. But of course, as you can imagine, we have very similar locally famous artists that I guess do sketches like that in
Yeah.
newspapers, that are super famous. I'm looking up one of them. Oh my God. I'll see if I can pull it up.
Well, the art's
Yeah.
okay.
What are some of
The
the?
jokes are the thing for him.
I want to know what.
Which
Yeah.
one
Yes,
he's
all right,
looking
just
at
continue. Just give me 1
specifically.
second.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I got somebody in my head like skydiving school next to an alligator fucking farm or whatever. And it's like just these kind of juxtapositions of and not everything is like that. It's situationalism, a lot of that,
So
where it's just
beware,
very
this is
ironic,
very, I
very
don't know,
funny.
black humor Austrian or something. It's not, yeah, I don't know. You can check it out. Let's see if you guys can see it.
I can see.
Put us in the cinema
It almost
here.
reminds me of Monty Python a
So
little.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, it's really not showing individuals from the nicest side, but I guess the whole idea i- is, yeah,
like caricatures.
caricatures, and of course, most often you have some different types of either supposedly regular Austrians often in a very badly caricatured way, or of course, very oftentimes you have politicians, you know. So
Okay.
that's who we like to make fun of, and this is the very, I don't know even know how you would call this type of art style, because to me, in a way, it's very repulsive. But from what I
Yeah.
understand, this is actually part of the whole joke or something, you know, to show these supposedly high class individuals in this different light or different
Mhm.
perspective. Yeah. So yeah.
Word. Yeah, it's very Monty Python kind of Robert Crumb-ish
Well,
or
it
whatever.
reminds me of Mad
So
Magazine.
go ahead. Yeah, okay, that's a good yeah, perfect. Mad is like it's probably very similar actually
Depending
now that
on
I
the
think about it,
artist,
except
there's
that
so
seems
many over the
yeah,
decades.
that's right. Mad is pretty cool. So, all right, I got off a whole tangent with the far
All
side, sorry,
right.
but I was just like thinking you might dig that shit. I figured. So I mean, high school fun times, not so fun. I mean, we'll get to college then dropping out. We're making our way there. It's like you're like I'm gonna be an artist. I'm not gonna hang out with anybody. I have a beret and I'm in my
Yeah,
room.
I
Fuck
have
off.
there's a
Like how'd
beret
that
sitting on
roll?
my desk over there, and I've got like one in every color in the closet over there.
Word.
um,
Part of the
yeah,
uniform.
and I
The
like
artiste.
berets. I know they're a bit overdone now, but I'm a fan. But anyway, I know that was not what you wanted to talk about. But
I don't mind. I'm just wondering. I mean, I was making
yeah,
a joke, and
and I
it's
think
like
it's very
actually she's
nice.
very into the beret stock,
And I got
guys. Watch out.
the striped
Uh,
shirt, obviously, to go with the beret. Um, but so your question was,
just like high school to college, that transition. I mean, it's always an
oh
awkward
yeah,
moment, just puberty and boys and girls for whatever, like sports, all that jazz.
oh
Like, were you like that's what I was saying? Were you just being a recluse and just kind of just maintaining the mode of artist, or were you kind of like, oh, life is crazy, I want to
no,
play?
play doesn't come easily to me. I don't know, or what I'm like, what is this thing you call fun? Um, but no, like so elementary school was like elementary school and junior high school, like grade 4 to 8 was pretty terrible. Bullied a lot. It was just atrocious. High school, high school, I went to an arts school,
Nice
so that made it
salvation.
easier. Yeah, yeah. So I can't even imagine what would have happened if I'd gone to the high school I was supposed to go to. Um,
Probably be a
but
tattoo artist now or something. Gone on a different rabbit hole for sure.
maybe. But yeah, so high school's all right. I've never really I never really enjoyed school. I don't know. I think I had a very all or nothing approach. So there were like some years where my grades would just be incredible because I would just focus and just really apply myself. You know, I'd be in that headspace where it's like I want to do well. But if there wasn't incentive for me to do well, and by incentive I just mean like, you know, if I had a good teacher, like the classes where I liked the teacher and I sensed that they were like a good person, or gave me, explained why we were doing these assignments, I would do well. Um, but if there was no explanation and if it was just like because I said so
It's
type
a
of attitude,
gulag. You're like, why am I
yeah,
here?
I would just be like, well, I don't care. I don't care then. And I had a hard time focusing, I think, on so many different subjects at once and balancing. I think a lot of it was balancing like the academic side with the social side, and that's not even to say I was that social, but it's just a part of school. Like you're forced into
Yeah.
this social setting. um, so yeah, even though I was generally more accepted, I was still like I had a friend group, but I was always kind of like off to the side, if that makes sense.
It
I've
does.
always been like the side friend, never like
Well,
fully
so you got
in
your
it.
Chiron, like I said, conjunct your moon in Gemini, and I have a Chiron conjunct moon. So it feels like, I mean, I can relate, ironically, more than you realize. In a sense, it's like we can. You're such a different creature, so it's a little different. But friends that how would I put it? It's not superficial friendships, but it's just like it's hard to get the depths of the emotionality of yourself across. Like it feels like everybody's playing a certain level here, and you're like, but I want to actually
Yeah.
talk about deep shit and feels and
Yeah.
weird things. And that might have just been a little alienating, I guess is the best way to put it emotionally. So you got into university for art. Like, what was? Were you just like, I'm
Yeah.
out of here, peace out? How'd that
Oh,
process go? And how did you drop out twice? That's a real. I mean, I've dropped out a few times, but go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I really wanted to get out of high school. Like I was ready to leave halfway through, because it just seemed like nonsense. And I want to emphasize it's not because I didn't like learning, because that's all I want to do. But in addition to art, obviously, but it's all intertwined. But yeah, I applied to OCAD, which is now called OCAD U, because it's university status now. At the time, it was transitioning from a college to a university. So I applied for their university, like their bachelor program, or faculty or whatever it would have been classified as. Um, and I applied for illustration, even though I think I would have just done better, um, just with my own energy and focus. I think I would have stuck with it if I'd gone for like drawing and painting,
Hmm.
because it was more hands-on and it was more like art focused, whereas illustration was more design focused, especially in first year, because in first year you're in this like design faculty and you take a class in every type of design that is offered, which I appreciate, but at the time it was very challenging for me because again it was that same issue of like I'm not really passionate about all these types of things, and my performance in those subjects wasn't what I wanted it to be, and that's very discouraging. Um,
It's like being into
so
animals and then being like, you're gonna have to learn ornithology or bugs
yeah,
or something like that, specifics, and you're like, well, I like animals. I just wanna. I get it. Sometimes
but I am curious about that.
about what?
But just learning more about
You're a
the
Gemini
natural
moon.
world.
You love learning. I mean, you feel
Yeah,
good
yeah,
emotionally learning.
get it. So yeah, the reason I didn't proceed at OCAD, um, was mainly because perhaps this is going to be a long story, and I apologize to
Dude, this
anyone
is
who
why you're here.
you're not obligated
Look,
to watch
like,
this.
no, it's cool. A lot of interviews are like, here's my piece of art, and what I mean, I want to get into like your art specifically, but I
Mhm,
find the human element as fascinating as the output of the individual itself, themselves. So
mhm.
feel free to gush. The conch is yours.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, I mean, I was exhausted. That was a big part of it. I moved to a new city. I was living with a roommate that I didn't get along with. There was all kinds of other factors. But the main thing was that in one of my classes, I got a 50%, and technically that's a pass, but the prerequisite for my program was 60%. Like, or it was a prerequisite for my program, so I needed to get 60% in this class. But none of the grades that I got on the assignments added up to a 50. Like it added up to 70 something. You know, it wasn't my best performing class. I wasn't the most interested in it, but it was a decent grade.
Mhm.
And I was like, why did I get this 50? What's going on here? OCAD had a policy, which I was well aware of. They
If you
had a
wear
policy.
berets, they take off 20 points. No, I'm kidding.
They'd
I'm
had policy.
fucked. Yeah.
Um,
They had a policy. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, sorry. They had a policy that if you missed more than 3 classes, you got an automatic 50% in that class. It was a really harsh later absence policy.
Okay.
Um, Maybe because artists are flaky and don't want to leave
Yeah.
their
Like,
house. I don't know.
don't just show up for the final, or else we won't credit you, kind
Yeah.
of thing. I
Yeah.
got you.
So I was very aware of this, and I made sure that I never missed more than 3 classes. But what happened with this specific prof is he would do attendance at the most random times. And typically with his class, we would have a break halfway through, and a good majority of the students would leave because the rest of the period would just be free work time. So we do the lecture at the beginning and whatever else, we needed to talk about that week. And then it was like, okay, now the rest is free work period. So a lot of people would just leave and go do whatever the heck else they needed to do. So I was one of those people. And I'm thinking perhaps he did attendance during that second half of class and marked me absent.
Even though
That's
you were
just
showing up. Yeah.
even though
That's your
I
theory
showed
here.
up, I did all the projects. I was
You're one
there.
of the kids in the hall, so to speak, which is a great show from Canada, by the
It's
way.
fantastic show.
Yeah,
It's another one
SNL
I
of
grew up
Canada. If
on.
people don't know, it's really solid. So you were not slacking totally. You showed up into the thing, but it was
No.
like time conscious or conscious. It's like let's not. We could utilize our time better. Let's do it. So
Yeah,
that's weird.
exactly. I would go
That's your
back home
theory.
to my apartment to work, um,
I'm
but
sticking with the
yes,
Bray
so,
theory. I mean, they're competing theories clearly, but
sure.
uh,
um,
so they gave you a 50. You didn't hit the fucking golden bar, and you're like,
yeah.
God damn it! And then you just kind of didn't proceed, as you put it
Well, so
eloquently.
I would have had to repeat that class, and I
Mm.
was like, this is not right. Like, I don't like this should
Fuck
not
this.
be.
Yeah, you're an
Yeah,
Aries. You could have said it.
and it was. I
You
know
can say
there's been
whatever
a
you
bit
want.
of that throughout. But it was just this whole bureaucracy of like calling one person looking for help, one person at the school, and then they pass me off to somebody else. And every person they'd pass you off to would be like, I don't know why Barb sent you to me. You need to talk to Mike about that. And then Mike would be like, well, I don't know why Jan sent you to me. You got to talk to, so and so about that. And it was just like I kept getting passed off to all these different people who couldn't answer my questions and wouldn't listen to my situation. And my
The
prof
ineptitude of bureaucracy, basically.
yeah, my
Yeah.
prof had just taken off to the East Coast for the whole summer, so I couldn't contact him.
Mm.
And so it was looking like I was going to have to repeat the class. And I was like, this is BS. Like I was just so frustrated and I was like, I just need to put this on hold. I just got to pause. I'm already so like overwhelmed by the whole experience of this first year. I just need to like take a step back. So I thought I would go back. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, if maybe my headphone is just coming loose. It just sounded different.
You're cool.
Sometimes these disconnect, so
If that happens, I'll for sure let you
where?
know.
All right. Um, but yeah, so I thought I'd go back, and I didn't. And then I spent a long period of time just like trying out other creative avenues, and uh,
Hold on,
and then
don't brush over that. What do you mean? Like sewing and like dancing, or like
yes,
really?
yes,
Okay.
I do. So I've been. So I guess that was another interest. And music has been a big interest. I don't play anything, but that has also, like I said, those
Life would
types
be
of things
meaningless
arose
without
for
music, according to Nietzsche.
adolescence.
So I hear you.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I was into sewing and I really wanted to make my own clothes. I dabbled in that a bit in high school. And then during that period of time, I really got into it. So I thought I would get into maybe costume design or fashion design. Like I kind of went down that path a little bit. I tried my hand at acting and modeling for a little bit, which was not
What did you
really.
do? Like what? Like was it like serious acting
Oh
or like improv?
no, no. I was intrigued by improv a little bit. I had a lot of friends who were into comedy, and I was like kind of tempted by it for a bit, which I think is maybe an odd thing because I don't seem like a very comedic person. But uh, but it looked like fun. I didn't fully pursue it though. Definitely, I think I did one quasi stand-up thing and was like, "This is awful." I
You did stand up? I've
did
never even done stand
stand-up.
up. Fuck.
It was this thing. It was called Rants for Rent, and it was
Like
like every
talk and
week
we'll
at a
pay you.
bar. Yeah, like so you paid like $5 to go up on stage and rant about something, and then whoever was voted the winner at the end of the night would get the
The
pool of
pot.
money.
More
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
That's genius. That's how you get college kids
Yeah.
involved.
So I did that, and I ranted about I think public transit. Um, but
You probably don't remember your bit, I'm assuming.
oh, I think I remember a lot of stuff, but I don't remember it word for word. This is a very
Okay.
long time ago in
Word.
the you know time of my life or period of my life. But yeah, like so acting and modeling, it was just like I was in a couple music videos and just like flyers for like the skate shop, like, just really, really small scale stuff. I'm not the physical build to be a model. Like I'm 5'2", so that really limited any sort of. I mean, maybe now it's different. There is definitely more um, diversity when it comes to modeling right now, and there's some agencies that really do specialize in that and diversity of age and height and size and just overall appearance, like not the same type of cookie cutter model-esque appearance. But at that time, it was certainly not like that, and it was just not something I really wanted to do. Like, it was fun. I liked, um, you know, I liked being on a set and dressing up and whatnot. But it was like, and my experience with that was very, very minimal. But it was fun. But I was much more interested in like what are the costume designers doing, like the people here for wardrobe, like what are they doing? I
Design.
wanted,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, or like what are the production assistants doing? So I would ask like, what can I do to help while I'm waiting for my, to be called on? Because it's hurry up and wait. Like they put you in a makeup chair and as if you're about to like do the scene, and then you sit for like 5 hours doing nothing.
That
It's
sounds
not fun.
horrifying. I guess
Yeah,
if
it's
you have a Far
awful.
Side book, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But other, other than that, or knit a
Other,
beret.
yeah.
All right. So you were doing the
So
rent,
all
rand, and
kinds of
thing.
things. I wanted
So
to get into film. I was really interested in film. I applied for film program, but
what
only
specific
made it
element of
4 years.
it do you enjoy? I mean,
Well,
that's
at the time,
broad.
yeah, I know. At the time, I was like, well, maybe I'll be a director. I really liked the idea of that, but I don't think I really had the drive to do it, or like the genuine passion for it, because I would just keep getting pulled back to like the costume element of it. So I don't think being a director was really
In the
the right
cards.
path for me. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Considering the High Priestess card is, I mean, on the one hand, you're more fun than you might think. So yes, Princess of Wands, like Raphael got, but the High Priestess is like the esoteric, the hidden, the background thing. I think you're more comfortable in a
Yeah,
sense, like knowing how things work on the, the design, not to be redundant, like
yeah,
the woof and the weave of the intuitive side of things. I'm sure it is fun to kind of get in the limelight or play creatively and stuff like that to certain degrees. But what you're saying makes me literally, I'd never want to act if I just sat there in a chair for 5 hours waiting for a minute for a scene. That just seems like a waste of time.
yeah. And then just all the repetition, and it just for me, it was like, how am I supposed to seem natural?
Mm,
I do this like again and again and again. Um, how is a surprised reaction supposed to actually look surprised? The more and
right.
more I do,
Yeah. Acting is interesting.
it just wasn't really
So you
my.
went back to school though,
I went
eventually.
back to school after a 10-year
Oh, that's a hot, yeah,
hiatus.
hiatus. Okay, okay, okay. So that whole time you were just dabbling kind of in creative fields. Was there any like thing
Yeah,
that
and
you
then
did? Like I
working.
was a derby girl and I killed people. Like what? Not like
No,
literally, but you're an Aries conjunct Jupiter, so it's like you probably
but
could be a warrior if you wanted to, a ninja. Um 10
maybe
years the whole
I don't
time,
know.
like, what was there any I don't need your resume, this isn't quite like that, but what were you doing? Just odd jobs and having fun
It,
and figuring it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, I
I'm
don't
not
know.
hating. I'm
It's
not,
no,
trust me.
no. It's tough to not look back on it and be like, oh my god, I wasted a decade of my life. I have to keep reminding myself that it was not a waste. Like there was a lot of value in taking that kind of scenic route.
Circuitous path. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good. Don't beat
Um,
yourself up, straight up.
but no, I was working. I worked as a personal trainer for a while, which was kind of a change of pace. And then again, had all these like little side pursuits in the arts. Like I tried my hand at costume design for a bit, and I did a bit of character design. I started doing murals
Mm,
in 2012, just kind of a random thing that I fell into. But these were always little like side projects. It was not enough to like sustain myself. So I worked a lot of part-time jobs and
Just
Art.
briefly, I'm curious, like with the personal training, what was it the whole shebang? Or were you like, I do Pilates? Or like, was there a specific thing you did?
No, it's funny because people always think that I was a yoga instructor. Even people who knew me then, they're like, "Oh, you still teaching yoga?" I never taught
I
yoga.
namaste. No, namaste.
Exactly.
Um,
Um, and maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe I look like a yogi or something, but I did a lot of like high intensity interval training.
okay.
That's the type of workout I like to do, and that was if it suited the client. I worked for myself for a while, but that was very challenging, and so then I worked at a gym for a couple years. Um, because when I worked for myself, I was just going like to people's homes and teaching them like workouts they can do in their apartment, and I wasn't totally comfortable with that. Even though everyone was very wonderful,
On the up and
thankfully,
up.
it's just
Were you finding people like obese people general? I mean, how would I put it? Usually, when in my mind, I'm like, I wouldn't go to a trainer unless I was in a certain state already. I would feel like
yeah.
awkward or whatever. Were you training people from like, you see what I'm saying? Were they like couch
Yeah,
potatoes, and
yeah.
you're like, we're gonna like lift our leg up today, which is not the
Mhm.
same thing at all as like we're gonna run 10 miles. So, what was your clientele like?
It was uh it was pretty diverse. There were a lot of people. I'm trying to remember. I feel like there were a fair amount of like women, maybe in their 50s. I had a few clients where it was like finally they were at that stage, like a lot of them, like their kids had just moved out, or they had this time where they could finally like breathe and be like, okay, now I want to focus on something that I want to do. So that was part of it. I Most people were in decent shape to begin with. There were like a lot of newbies, but I wasn't training anyone like completely from the ground up.
Gilbert Grape's mom was not at the
No,
place. Gotcha. What was
no.
your first mural? Because it seems like that was a
Yeah.
happenstance type thing.
Yeah. That was a very random thing. So it was a friend of mine worked at a startup, and they wanted a mural for their front entrance. And they were looking at a couple different artists, and she was like, maybe you'd want to send them an idea, and maybe they'll like it. Like she kind of recommended me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't even imagine painting on a wall. Like I had very limited experience with that.
It's a different
And
beast, I'm sure. We'll get into it,
it
but
is, yeah, just to think about like how does this translate from something like a sketch to surface, a big surface, like floor to ceiling. Um, so yeah, I sent them an idea and they liked it, and I painted this mural. It was not at all like what I paint now, but it was just
in
this
what
kind of
sense?
very,
It was like
oh, it's
fun
just
and like weird because your stuff is fun. That sounds
no,
horrifying. But it's very you have a very discreet look. I mean, was it totally not
yeah.
like that in that sense? It was kind of anything goes.
The ones I did after that were for a
Mm.
period of time. And now I'm like, oh, how do I get back to that? Just like, not necessarily that style, but just that feeling of like creative freedom and
Yeah.
not really caring. But no, this first one, it was pretty simple. It was just like a cityscape um, with their very simplified cityscape too, like just the blocks of the buildings and the different shades of gray depending
An
on where the light is.
impression of a city.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got you.
and then their logo, because they wanted their logo, and their logo looked like one of those color blindness tests with all of the like green
I just
dots.
want to say it's funny that you say colorblind, just because in my mind I was just thinking of the blind kid. I think they're blind who paints like insane. No, they're not blind. I think he's mentally handicapped or something. But he goes up in a helicopter and paints the whole cityscape, like or draws it. I'll send you a link later to this
Ooh,
crazy thing. It's the most detailed
sounds
thing
cool.
ever. It sounds antithetical
Oh,
to what you were doing. You were like, "Here's a city, kind of." I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you said
yeah.
blind, I was like, "I have to
No,
say this
sorry.
because I'm sinking. I got to talk about it." Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all right. And yeah, and so I just had those circles throughout as kind of like bubbles floating over this simplified city. Um, but they then recommended me to another startup that was just kind of getting off the ground at that time, and and that just kind of started to build the momentum. Um, And for that company, they wanted something really like quirky and zany. And so that's where I really tapped into the more cartoonish style that I like.
Put on your backwards red hat. You said,
Yeah.
we're going Animaniacs here.
Yeah. Especially for like, I've done 7 or so murals for them.
One group particularly?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one
They
company
love your
because
shit, clearly.
well,
It's
it
like,
was all within a chunk of time. It was like 2012 to 2017.
okay.
So they were very small when I did the first mural, and then within a few months they got a lot of investor funding, and so they moved. They moved to a much bigger space, and they're like, "We want to have you back. Can you do a mural on this wall?" And I was like, "Yes." Like I want to do something. I wasn't totally happy with the first one I did for them. It was kind of this like Rube Goldberg style machine that kind of went up the stairs, but I felt like I didn't really give it my all. And so the second one I did for them, I really like put everything into it.
The champagne bottle popped. You're like, I'm
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
And then they got more funding and they expanded into the space below. So they're like, why don't you come back and do another one? And then they expanded again. Like their team kept growing exponentially. So then they moved
Dare
to
I
building
say your art didn't hurt that process? Maybe it
well,
actually
I
inspired
don't
it. Who
know.
knows? Yeah,
Maybe.
you have a very, I mean,
It's
I
more.
wouldn't say corporate, but it's like fun corporate. I can see how that would enhance a
Yeah.
corporate setting. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
And yeah. So
Um,
7 murals for one company. I mean, are you
yeah, so I
still
did
on good
4
terms
in
with
there.
them?
I mean, I don't think I'm on bad terms. I
I
just don't
put you on
think
the spot. You know,
they're
they're like,
really.
burn her file, never speak to her again. I don't think it's quite like that. They're probably like, all
No.
right, we've milked this cow quite a bit. Let's save money on paint or something. Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah,
Um,
they've evolved, and the market for murals is really changing right now too, just with the economy and whatnot.
what do you mean by that? Is it like a really expensive project?
It's like a luxury to
Mm,
have something like someone come in and like design something custom for your wall and then hand paint it. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and I think people don't understand like just what that entails. I'm sure it varies from artist to artist,
sure.
but like to hand paint a wall is a lot of work, and a lot of people. I don't know. I've done a lot of it for like less than minimum wage, and you
Gemini
get halfway
Chiron.
through and you're like, oh crap, I'm like losing money now. It's
Gotta finish the
it's
project.
been a lot of suffering. And
Now
so
you
now
and
I'm just like,
who's the
I
guy? Go ahead.
can't keep doing that. No, I gotta charge what it's actually
The
worth.
value.
And
Yeah, yeah. Makes
at
you
least,
appreciate the Sistine Chapel and shit like that. Where it's just like, I'm just gonna sit here for a long ass time. I think they were
yeah,
commissioned like pretty heavily, and obviously we know
I
these,
hope so.
Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all these people. I think it was Michelangelo who did the Sistine, but
Mhm.
anyway, so 7 on one go, and that was all just random at that point. Were you like, I'm doing this? Like, when did you
It
kick into?
was No, it was sporadic. It would be like a couple projects a year. I was doing like chalkboard art was really popular at the time too, so I had, um, a monthly gig doing chalkboards for a music venue. So there was like little things here and there, but but it wasn't really like picking up steam. I didn't have the digital skills, so like I would draw all of the roughs, everything like that, draw it all by hand. I was like, this is taking forever. This is totally inefficient. But I didn't know how to use like Adobe programs because I'm old enough that when I went to high school,
There's a
that
learning
wasn't
curve.
taught.
Yeah,
Like we weren't taught. I took graphic design classes in high school, but we weren't taught Photoshop or Illustrator or any of that kind of stuff. Even though like people working in design were using that at the time, it
standard
wasn't very focused on.
protocol.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I hear
exactly.
you.
So that was one of the main reasons why I was like, I need to go back to school. Like, I need to learn the skills to advance this and maybe get a job elsewhere. I was very dissatisfied with just working jobs that were, for me, not doing anything to further my career. For somebody else, they would have been. Like, I was working at a hair salon for a period of time as an assistant, not cutting hair, because it takes a lot of skill to cut hair. But I was just an assistant, but it was not the industry I wanted to be in. And, for somebody else, that would have been a fantastic opportunity because that's how you start. Like, that's how you kind of put in your hours and you work your way up. But for me, it was just like another job, and I didn't want to be in that position. And I don't want to sound like I'm speaking ill of the hair salon, because that is where I learned about the college program or university program that I went back to school for. So it was very beneficial in that regard. And my boss was super supportive. She was a wonderful woman. So,
Well, if they listen to this, you didn't sound like you were hating on them, for the record.
okay.
I think
I
Canadians are
felt like
so sensitive to, like, it's like you're not callous, or like I hate them. Doesn't sound like that at all.
we're
All
very
right, so you went.
apologetic.
It's all good. I think that might be a Mercury. Moon conjunct Gemini, moon conjunct Chiron thing. I feel you. I tend to be very like, oh, don't worry about me. Or I'm sorry a lot. So you go back to school, kind of beef up the skills. Where did you start kind of being? I mean, obviously you fucked around a little with administrative business stuff, and you were like, I don't love that. You're doing art murals. You're doing all these kind of skills. It's kind of starting to synthesize. When has it started to click for you? I saw that you were on the cover of a magazine of some kind. I don't know if that was art
Yes, a
related or
local
just
magazine.
glamorous or something, but
It had to do with art.
good. Okay, I was like, it could be either. I have no clue. I don't have a copy. So yeah, when did you start kind of writing down towards your niche now? And somebody's asked in the comments,
Yeah,
they
sorry.
assume they no, you don't have to worry about it. I sometimes glance over there. They're like, I guess you appreciate graffiti now. We can touch on that as much or as little as you want. But yeah, I'm wondering just kind of when you started kicking full bore into independent woman artist, like official, like that's what you
Yeah,
identify as. Because it doesn't, like, at some point you're like, I like this. It's a hobby. I can get paid. I'm losing money. I should
yeah,
work on my wheelhouse or whatever. And you did that. So what did it look like after that? Feel
yeah.
free.
And I should say I do appreciate graffiti, and I did dabble in it a little bit in my teens. Um, but I wasn't very good at it. Limited resources, we didn't have like different caps or anything like that I could get my hands on. So the stuff I did was not to the best of my abilities. But anyway, so yeah, so I was school was hellish, I should say. um, I had this idea that, I have a decade now out of school, and I've, worked all these jobs and all this life experience, like I'll be fine. But it was just, the workload was inhuman. That's not why I left, though. So, learned the skills that I needed to learn, definitely. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tears. It's not an enjoyable time. Um, but made a lot of wonderful friends though with my classmates, and maybe it's that kind of shared trauma. I don't know, but halfway through my program, so it was a degree level program, so it was 4 years. Halfway through, the school went on strike. And at that time, I had started a big project that I landed in the summer, um, that was going to take months to complete. It was a big mural project for a new development in town. And I didn't mind that the school was on strike, because I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to like work on this. So by the time classes resumed, there was like 2 weeks to finish the semester. So they were going to do like a really condensed version of the school year, but even that was going to be hellish. Um, so I chose to, instead of do that, I chose to finish the mural project that I was working on.
Hmm.
And I got a refund for that semester, and I was like, I'm going to put this on hold. I'm going to go back to school in the spring. Let me just finish this project, start fresh in the spring, and finish my program, because I was like, you're not dropping out of this time, Stephanie. um, but then in the spring, there was just more and more and more demand for murals, and I kept getting all of these opportunities, and I was like, I would be foolish
Hmm.
to
Strike while the iron's hot, kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. To not move forward with this and to just go back to school instead. And I'm very glad I made the decision I did because from what I heard, like I wasn't very satisfied with the structure of the program. It seemed like it was kind of deteriorating. And it sounds like, again, I don't want to sound like I'm speaking ill of the school or anything
You
like
have
that.
your opinions. You're entitled to your opinions. It's all good.
Yeah. But it doesn't sound like many of my classmates really felt like they got a proper education from it.
Hmm.
So a lot of them have said, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, sometimes staying in line for the piece of paper isn't worth it. I mean, if
Yeah.
the scene is calling you, you might as well go
Yeah.
do the thing. You
Mhm.
said briefly that it took months for this mural. Is that typical? How long do murals take?
Oh, oh, it
I have
depends.
no clue. You're my first muralist I've ever even talked to, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's Greek to me.
Yeah. I mean, this one was a big project because it was many walls.
Hmm.
So it was like the base building of this massive warehouse that was being converted into like tech offices and manufacturing spaces. So they needed like basic like color coding and numbering for each section. So part of the murals were just like painting numbers on walls and like painting colors and abstract shapes so that people in that color, so people know like you're in this section. Um, and then there was some decorative stuff too. This project has been an ongoing thing too. For a few years, I'd go back every year and add a bit more to it. Um, the last one I did was I finished it about a year ago, and
That's
I
a
think
very atypical thing. I mean, I'm not saying the opportunities don't exist, but it's like I've never. You think on like public transit maybe, or maybe museums or something might do something similar to that. Universities,
Mhm.
where it's like, how do we guide the monkeys properly creatively?
Yeah,
Um, I've never heard that, so that's interesting that you did that. I
yeah,
mean, I bet you
it
got
was
tired of
very
drawing the
unique.
number 3 a lot or something like that. You're like, "I'm
I
sick
only
of
had to
this."
do it once,
Okay.
um, but no, I really enjoyed that project.
Word.
Um, and it's weird to feel like this space is, I don't know, it started to feel like a second home.
Right? Once you
It's
dwell there
bizarre.
enough, you've
Yeah,
imbibed the vibes enough, you're like, and plus your creative effort is in time, like your actual, like, essence or whatever you wanna put it, is in
yeah,
there probably as much as anybody who works there. To some degree, I'm not
yeah.
exactly. So it's like you've left your stamp on. I mean, if you've seen Interstellar, you've made the watch tick in that building. I guess you could say your love has been put into it.
Mhm.
Raphael, I've been talking a whole lot. Is there anything? I mean, we can keep going, but I'm just curious if there's any questions you got.
Well, mainly I'm listening. The moral thing is interesting because I was just wondering. Number one, of course, you can do amazing things with it, but even as like a company or whatever else you mentioned, Jim, I was even wondering if there is anything practical you could do because you can install like huge signs, but you
Mm.
only have them across the whole wall. So if you really want to like have an immersive experience, even just giving guidance, I mean, you need the walls painted, I guess. And then, of course, it's much fancier to have something beautiful than just painted red or whatever, which I guess would be the other option. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm listening mainly. So yeah, I think it's a highly interesting story and also great to show in a way, with the most unconventional things you can be successful, or at least your process goes on wherever it leads you, right? But who would have
Hmm.
thought that someone can even do something like that, right?
Yeah. And that, like I said, it's something I feel like I fell into. Um, I didn't really plan on it or work towards this specific thing, and I'm diversifying a fair bit lately. But but yeah, it's an interesting line of work.
And then
Well, it's
just
like high priestess energy. You just follow your
so,
intuition. You
so from
follow
what
the
I've
right.
seen, these murals are both inside and outside, because that's the one I've seen on the website.
Yeah, there's some outside. I haven't done a ton of exterior stuff. Um, that's a whole different beast. Not even in terms of like the technique
Weather,
of it, but yeah,
climate.
I've I've suffered through some of those, like painting in 0-degree temperatures, and but yeah, I don't want to gripe about that. But no, just in how they're structured, the process, at least from what I've encountered, seems to typically be through some sort of like community organization, or something that's very focused on like public art. Um, so there tends to be more of like a
theme.
or like approval process, right? Like they'll put
Mhm.
out a request for proposal. Um, so
To make sure it's boring enough for public space. At least that's my impression usually, or ugly enough too often. Yeah.
Or yeah. Well, and with the public space, you can't please everybody either. So with the stuff I've painted outside, thankfully, much of the feedback from passersby has been positive and supportive. But there's people who are like, "Why did you choose that orange?" So
It
like, I
happens.
would have done it like this. Or some people, have gone off about how they should have got a different artist to do it, and
Fuck them.
so forth.
I mean,
But yeah, with
one of the
the
go ahead.
interior, with the interior stuff, it's typically like the manager of an office will like directly reach out to you and ask for a quote or something like that, or if the designer who's doing the space will like include your contact for like this feature wall or whatever. It's structured very differently. So anyway, keep going.
Oh, I had no thought. The one of the things that I saw, I mean, I don't know where this is in the chronology of your work or your portfolio or whatever. The locker room with kind of a, I think it was a locker
Oh,
wall. It
yeah.
was very interesting. I showed that to my nana because I was like, "Oh, she's coming on the podcast."
Oh,
I live with my nana right now, and she was like, "Oh, she's cute." I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't really think about that. I was like, "Oh, she's a pretty girl." But the point is,
he is.
you're very good at art, and I was like,
Vicious.
that was probably my favorite thing. One of my favorite things. You got a lot of various things, a lot of fun, fresh. That's why I
There's a
titled this
lot
"Fresh
of different
Perspectives."
stuff.
It's kind of like a summer salad or something like that. Generally, like I feel it's got like a good vibe to it. But that
Thank
locker
you.
room was something that was so atypical. It felt like a zoom in on a comic or something.
Okay.
Certain pixelation. You know what I'm talking about? I mean,
Yeah,
clearly you did
it's
it.
similar. Let me see if I can find the book. It's sorry, I'm on a
Don't sweat.
office chair. I'm gonna wheel away. It's similar to this artist.
Yeah.
Um, so I think he has a piece that's just like that. I don't think it's in here though, because this is just small. But yeah, that was just a very basic problem solving type of design.
Like
So
math
that
writ large, essentially.
yeah, that the company does they describe it as like digital marketing, but it's much more, I don't know, much trickier to explain than that. So that's like for the people who are not in their industry, like that's the terminology they use. So um, I had done a mural at their front entrance that had these kind of this like RGB overlay effect with the colors and then like pixel dots and whatnot throughout. So we wanted to continue that theme on those lockers, um, but do it in a different way that wasn't in the same style as the entrance piece. And it just had to be something simple and graphic that would liven up that space. And that was all on vinyl. So that's one thing that I do a lot of now is just design something and have it printed on vinyl. Because sometimes for surfaces, painting is not the best option.
Hmm.
Those lockers were powder coated, and I was told by a paint expert that like you can't paint a powder coated surface, but I've since been told by other paint experts that you can, so I
It
don't
might
know.
chip
But we went
more
with
readily
vinyl.
over time. It seems like it would just
Yeah.
like because it's like a less it's not as absorbent of a surface, I guess. It's a little more, I don't know. There's polymers or whatever's going on. It might chip more easily over time. That's my only assumption.
Yeah, I don't know. That was my guess too, that like so much would come down to how you prime it, but I don't know. So we went with vinyl for that. But
I'm
yeah,
gonna
that
pull up
one's
your Instagram and look at your art just and kind of geek out,
yeah.
or your website. I guess I should look at that. It's on
Maybe
your
I
LinkedIn, which is
saw
through
it
the website.
on
Um,
LinkedIn.
yeah, I was like, what is going on? So, I'm
Haven't used
curious what like these are random questions, and that's why I want to look at your art, and we can talk about stuff that's not art if you want. Like, what do you think about aliens or anything you want to
Yeah,
talk about?
I know you go into such deep things with your guests, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't, I find it interesting to listen to that, but I don't have my own formed perspective on that or my own,
That is
like
a
everyone
perspective
seems
itself,
so enlightened, and I'm like,
bro.
I'm not even close to that. What am I going to talk about? So
What we're doing. I trust me. I know how. I
I
mean, I
was
like.
very nervous at
Yeah,
the
like,
beginning.
kid. It's like being like. I mean, I've said this to people that I ask on the podcast. It's like Bart Simpson on acid in a treehouse. I'm just kind of asking questions, and like if it comes up, if we talk about Ouija, that's cool. If we don't, that's fine. Like I don't want to talk about Ouija. I don't know why that came to mind, but you see my point. It's really nonchalant, and Raphael adds both flavor and holds the space. And I love hearing his perspectives on stuff. Well, they're changing a lot. I think over time we've been doing this for a few years now, but this topicology particularly is like I looked at you as an artist. I wasn't like, oh my god, you've had a DMT experience where you were told go down that door and you found your husband, or
Yeah.
it's not quite like that, but we can go into interesting rabbit holes if you want. I'm looking at your art. You, like I said, I mean, if people want to see, oh, we can't show this shit, it doesn't work. The locker room I was looking at, it's very pixelated, much more than I thought. Dude, your color choices, the patterning, it's graphic design is dripping through this. I mean, that's what it looks like. It's a very playful
It's
graphic design.
very, yeah, there's a lot of typography,
What
depending
are
on the
some of your
piece.
influences? Like when someone's like, what are you drawing
Oh,
from?
all behind me.
Oh boy. It's like David
Um,
Byrne's lyrics. It's like, where do we begin? So
how
yeah,
did I get
where are some of the things that get you off aesthetically? Like, I mean, clearly you have a style
here?
yourself that you're kind of imbuing, but that, like, I play all sorts of, I play whatever, but I listen to Daft Punk. I'm not playing electronic music. So
Mm,
yeah, it might be very different. You might be like, I love cave paintings from LaSalle. And it's like, I would have never guessed.
yeah.
Yeah, what's your shtick? What are you into?
Yeah, I do think some of my interests, a lot of them have not made their way into my art yet, and that's why I'm trying to do more personal work. Hopefully, I've kind of come to a bit of a clearing in projects where it's like I'm coming up for air right now. So I'm like, now's the time to try to shift a little bit towards more personal work because the client work, you don't really get a chance to explore all of the ideas that you want to explore because it's made for somebody else. So my the main things I'm really interested in are like decorative arts. Um, so like I
Like
love a lot of
Chinese plates or like whatever they
yeah.
called it. I forget. Not Tupperware. I'm
Um,
forgetting what it fucking China. Porcelain China. You know what I'm talking about. Like
yeah,
anyway.
certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, things that are applied to housewares or textiles, embroidery, these like very traditional hands-on arts. So like this is one example of a book that you can see all the tabs in there.
That's the
Um,
true mark of a Gemini moon. It's like I love these ideas. I want to come back to them.
yeah,
There you
there's a
go.
lot of hoarding of ideas, but just these really, I don't know if anyone can see, there's a glare
Yeah.
from my light, but these really intricate, detailed patterns. I find myself really drawn to like the medieval era.
I was gonna say that looked a lot like the tapestries of Bordeaux or whatever back in the day.
Yeah,
I'm not
I've
gonna
got a ton of books like this, like all over here, but
and keep going. I'm
oh,
cutting you off like hardcore. I
no,
should
that's all
probably
right.
work on that.
That's all right.
I'm
But
I'm
it's
So is it what draws you to that typical? Is it the iconography or the repetition of
um
shape and color, or like what are you drawn to in that?
I like the way shapes are stylized. There's something about like the flatness of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the like the way everything is illustrated. And that's not to say I don't like art that has a lot of depth. I do. And I'd like to explore both of those types of styles. But there's just something about like the order of it. Like everything is like laid out in this very orderly, flat, dense kind of way that really appeals to me. Or I also like another thing I'm really like inspired by is like illustrated advertisements
Hmm.
from about like the 30s to the 50s.
Like Norman Rockwell?
Not well, I mean his
I mean,
art
that's
is
like yeah,
beautiful,
yeah, yeah.
no more.
Like
I'm
like
trying. I don't really
typography more. Like here's
where it would
uh,
be there's a certain style where it's very simple like bata shoe ads.
hmm,
That's a
I'm gonna
good
Google this
example.
while we're talking. Bad issue.
BATA. I think they were probably from like the 40s is my guess, but I haven't really looked deeply into this, but they have a very I find a very pleasing aesthetic. It's when like all of the focus is put on a select few items, and they're done. Maybe they were airbrush or just really like softly painted on either like a pattern background or like a just solid color background, and then there's just text either at the bottom or the top. But there's just all your focus is put on this object, and it's illustrated with such care. I don't know. It just like something about it visually.
Well, it's like it's very discreet in that it's like it's showcasing an idea, a name. Like it's very limited in terms of what it's trying to show, but the way it does it is highly stylized. And once
Mhm.
again, it feels like this kind of I mean, 2D is how you're putting it, and that is what it is. But it's like almost kind of like you're opening a book and there's a pressed flower kind of effect.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
it's like flat but dimensional at the same
yeah,
time. I
exactly.
don't know how to describe it any better than that, but
So is there anything you want to show me that's also on your Instagram, for example? Because I just pulled that up.
Specifics. Ooh, this
Let
is
me
where the
see.
tech side of
Okay,
things
let's
can
see.
get spiffy.
um,
Yeah, if people didn't know, this is the kind of colorful palette. She's got
yeah,
black and white stuff, but also it's very spring summer salad. I don't know how to explain it.
yeah, um,
Vibrant.
But
yeah.
I'm
So
curious
I
about
mean,
this. Of course, you're going to talk about art now, but I'm curious. You've been featured on some kind of magazine here, it seems.
yeah, that was a local magazine. So every issue would have a different like local business person or whatever it might be. So they did a little feature on me. I would say if you go up a little bit, yeah, those are the lockers. That one with the flowers and the lions, yeah. So you could the center one shows photos of the actual mural.
Yes, I'd love to open it up, but I don't even have an account here.
Oh no, that's all right.
It
But
happens.
those are a good example of kind of the styles that interest me and that the kind of overall look that I've been gradually working towards. I want to do more detailed work. A lot of my previous work is very simple, and even though I like simplicity, I don't want it to be the only thing that I do. I want to really flex my artistic muscles, I guess.
They're
And
there
so all
for
of
sure.
these, they don't really, like I think I said at the beginning, they don't really show what I know I'm capable of. I have some projects that I have not shared yet because they're just finishing um, that show that a bit more. But
Even the fade
so
of
let
the
me show
hibiscus
my
flower. I'm not
attempt
sure
at
if it's hibiscus, but even that purple fading flower at the top right of what he was just showing,
that. There's sweet
like that
peas.
sweet peas. Okay, that takes. I mean, to do gradient like that is not easy. I imagine, and that's a lot of mixing and tone
Yeah.
work or whatever. Being like, all right, it looks good from here and there. Takes a lot of
That
effort.
was all just done with a brush too. So, because I don't use, I'm not insured for spray paint. um, but yeah, so I just use a brush to create that. So that was just like layer of just like doing this
Holy shit!
motion and that, like these little like dashes with the brush, just layer after layer, so that
Do
you
you get
get there's like
ripped or your
4 or 5.
biceps and stuff like after this? Or you just like, I am
No, but you
Arnold.
get uncomfortable.
Right. That's
um,
what was up with the lettering? Because that was almost like one of those I forget what they're called, but like E F D, like read the and with Donald Duck
well,
or
the
Duff.
eye chart.
Yeah, it was a literal eye chart.
No, you're talking about the poster?
Hmm.
That was actually a school project that I redid. So that's kind of a personal project. That's the Holy
There's a
Mountain.
Saturn symbol. Okay, yeah, the Holy Mountain
Yeah.
by Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you
So
know what's
there's
up. Your team
a
rabbit hole. There you go.
But
so
just for me being slow, how does it relate? Or just that is
It
supposed
says
to.
Holy Mountain on it.
so it
The
says
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I
no,
didn't
it's
see
all
it at
right.
all until just
That's like
now.
I'm
Which
reading. Okay,
That
but
was
that's
yeah,
kind
great.
of the
It's so
point.
it's so arcane that at first glance I wouldn't even have read this. Yeah, great. Nice.
That's good. That was kind of the
that's like
the
an
object.
optical illusion, almost like trompe l'oeil. I didn't. If you don't focus on it right, it is just like not random symbols. And I mean, it's like there's Saturn, there's an eye, but now that I pull back, I feel like dumb. I'm like, am or ducks? Am or not ducks? Um, that's cool. So, what was the deal with that? I mean, what school is pushing Jodorowsky? They're dope.
No, they weren't.
Oh, so you were just sublimating it into their curriculum and little minds.
So it was for my typography class.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the project brief was, but I decided to do all these different posters relating to films that I liked, but showing that film through typography. That one is the one that I liked the most because it worked so well, because you could pull all this symbolism from the film and all the different colors and patterns and everything throughout it and simplify them into letters that really they represented the film and the title. So
What other films did you do that you didn't make? I mean, obviously that was the one that you said you
yeah,
favored. What were some of the other options?
I did Freaks. You know, the one
I've
from the
never seen that.
1940s? Really?
No.
Yeah, it takes place at a carnival, and it's all of the people who are in like the freak show. But it's humanizing them. It's showing their like I can't remember the whole synopsis of the film. I've seen it, but it's been a couple years. But that's the essence of it. I did Fantastic Planet, so it was all like the cult films, you know. Um,
I don't know Fantastic Planet. I mean, I feel like a total
you
dolt
watched
now.
No,
No?
Fantastic Planet. That's a French film.
Okay.
Planet Sauvage, and it's an animated one. I think you'd like it. Very,
This is like 70s or something, right?
yeah,
This
yeah. I'm
is
not.
really, I think this is pretty
Yeah,
hardcore psychedelic from what I remember. If that's the one I'm thinking of,
yeah.
I'll check. Hmm.
It's like National Geographic meets Yellow Submarine.
Kind
Or
of.
something. That's how it sounds when you're saying it's like the
Yeah,
French in the 70s were very progressive. Um,
yeah. I
I'm not
had.
trying to put you on the spot. I was just like when you said that's Holy Mountain, I'm like, what? Now I see that you are into film and you are translating it through kind of a prismatic that is very different. I would not, like that. What the Holy Mountain thing? I wouldn't have expected. And I mean, oh yeah, okay. I've never
Yes,
seen this, but I know it. It's like the wall animation almost, or Monty Python.
very
Uh,
similar. Yes, I loved The Wall in high school. Actually, my dad and I took him to go see that in concert.
You love The Wall? To me,
Yeah,
that's like the darkest, like Floyd. I'm like, Animals is awesome. Dark Side of the Moon is
it's
awesome.
very dark.
Yes, it's very cinematic. Obviously, I mean, it translated well to a film. You took your dad to the fucking wall?
Yeah, because he's the one who got me into it.
Okay. He is cool. I forgot. I mean, he's ganking out on the cell phone or the headset or whatever. So he's with it. He can handle it. Roger Waters just had a different feel generally. I mean, clearly it was more nihilistic, more like, oh my god, are we gonna figure this out? I got to re-listen to that, and I'm realizing we did an episode on Holy Mountain right at the very beginning when I was in Australia, right
Oh,
when we started this
cool.
podcast. It was more of us like just kind of geeking out, being like, "This is a fucking crazy film. What is this scene? What is this scene?" I'm not gonna say it was by any means authoritative, but it reminds me. It's funny that you say that because I made a few posts on Facebook the other day quoting Holy Mountain. It's one of those things where it deserves revisiting every now and then, whether one is into esoterica or not. It's very high priestess card energy. There's something there for everybody, even though it's highly bizarre, highly bizarre.
They got everything in there.
Dude, the frogs and the lizards and the dress up at the beginning and the Mayan stuff.
Oh,
It's some
yeah.
of the most beautiful.
There's some animal cruelty in it that's hard to watch.
I'm vegan. I hear you.
Not as blatant as like Pink Flamingos. That was another one I had in that project, and
You're so
that
much cooler
happened
than
in
me. I don't know any of these
2018.
films. What's Pink Flamingos?
Oh, John Waters.
Okay, I know of him,
It's
the
one of
smoker.
those
Yeah.
films. I mean, it's so my friend was taking a film class in university, and as part of the course, the prof included it because it was very relevant to what they were talking about. And he warned everyone for weeks. He's like, "You do not have to watch this. It's very,
It's very gritty
controversial.
looking.
It's very gritty,
Oh
yes."
my God, this is what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
um, I think John Waters has admitted he was pretty messed up on drugs when he made this.
Like good drugs or bad drugs, like meth or acid. There's a big difference.
I don't know what he was on,
Okay,
but
yeah.
yeah, it was basically the intention of the film is to create like the most offensive thing you can.
Hmm.
I think that was what he set out to do. So the prof warned everyone about it for weeks and said, "You don't have to watch this." Even at the beginning of class, he was like, "You don't have to stay. If you want to leave, leave at any point." And by the end, it was just my friend and I left in the room.
That
Everybody
ratchet?
left after the first few minutes. Oh yeah, there's you have to like for me at least, like you have to watch it with this like wall up to know that like okay, he's trying to offend you.
And
So
provoke.
just
Yeah.
yeah, don't get offended. But yeah, there's
Your earbud has popped out a little, I think. Talk for a
yeah.
second. Oh no, you're good. Well,
Am I good?
you're
I
good.
don't know.
Talk. Now you're muffled to me.
Yeah,
Eh,
I think you may want to
Oh,
try
the battery's
reconnecting it
dying?
because it gave some kind of like radio types technical signal.
Okay.
No, you're good now. Talk.
Yeah, it could
Hey,
change
Am I
any
good
second.
now?
You
yeah,
can be
you're
good.
good.
Yeah, could be good.
To
Yeah.
Okay.
me.
That's a relief because I don't know how to do this.
The
I'm
spirit
not.
of John Waters is fucking with us. Cigarette smells coming from nowhere. Anyway, you were saying like it's a very provoking. I mean, some film is like
Yeah.
made to like The Rite of Spring or something. It's like that's Tchaikovsky, but it's like I'm gonna make
You're
something
right.
that's gonna
It's
trigger.
Stravinsky.
What did I say? Tchaikovsky? You know what I
Yes.
mean. There you go.
Russian
Thank you for
composer.
editing it. Yeah. Hey, sounds like. Anyway. Yeah. So what I was getting at, I guess, is sometimes people go into like Frank Zappa did it a lot. I like Zappa.
Me too.
Where he was just like, "Oh, if you like Zappa, do you like Beck?
I haven't listened to a ton of Beck, but I
Do
like.
yourself a favor tonight because I
Okay.
was on a walk earlier because I do walks and stuff. I mean, you've heard some of these songs, probably like Deborah or whatever. Sex Laws, probably, and the music video for
Mhm.
Laws has Jack Black in it, and it's really funny. It's mocking New Age. It's like I want angel answers and all this kind of stuff. It's very funny.
Okay.
But the Midnight Vultures album, I was listening to it, and I was like, this is because I've always looked at Beck as a modernization, kind of a hippification of Zappa's aesthetic. Even in some of it, the Midnight Vultures album, there was kind of like drill sounds and stuff. And I was like, that's straight up ripping off. I'm not in a bad way, but it's like that's pulling from Uncle Meat, which is this very kind of
Okay.
it was for a film. I'm kind of geeking out here, but anyway,
No, sorry.
point is sometimes people really put things in your face just because art has to exist for that emotional response. You see, like sometimes it's just like it has to exist, even if it's not like quote good. Like so, I mean that
Mhm.
gets weird into. We haven't really talked about this. What your thoughts on modern art and stuff are, and like interpretive art, because you're very discreet.
Oh.
God damn, I'm rambling a lot, so I can tie it in.
No,
Anyway,
it's okay.
John Waters Flamingos, you did something too. If you want to pigeonhole into
Yeah.
your appreciation and the interpretation of art styles, we can. But I kind of just literally spray painted you with all sorts of stuff just then. So
Figuratively.
yeah, yeah. If any of that resonated or you want to talk about it, cool. But Midnight Vultures, ladies and gentlemen, is everybody's homework. Thank me later. It's very
Okay.
fun and hip and psychedelic and somehow organic. It feels like kids in the '90s, like on acid, watching cartoons in the morning or something. It's got
Okay.
you'll dig it. I mean, I think,
All right.
especially if you like Zappa.
Probably.
It's like
Yeah.
soundscape stuff and very much mixed media, acoustic mixed media or whatever. Um,
Did you ever listen to Ween?
I know everybody always asks me this. I know
Oh,
of them
really?
through Fish, because Fish
Okay.
covered a
Nice.
song of theirs
Yeah.
called "Roses Are Free." I
Mhm.
don't, and the cover for "Sex and Chocolate" or something like that is dope. I like the
How could
underboob.
you not know that
Yeah, it's like,
cover?
come on. I mean, I'm not like a misogynist or anything, but it's like that's really artsy. Whatever, it's beautiful. So for
It's
what
a
it is,
well done cover.
thank you.
It's
If you could say it, guys, I feel so much better now. I'm like, I
yeah.
don't want to be
I'm
like
not
the guy in the
offended
the
by it.
creep in
I
the
think
locker room saying, check
it's
out this poster. Um,
oh.
Yeah, it seems Jim got stuck again.
All right. Raphael, what do you listen to?
In terms of music,
Yes.
oh well, currently I actually don't listen to so much music for the past year or something, which is really strange
Oh.
even to me. But when I started listening music from like old school hip hop to acid jazz, and recently, I guess, what you would call deep dubstep, and like
Okay.
also different like ethno tribal things. Yeah, quite varied overall.
Cool.
I usually like music that's more. I mean, it depends on the mood. There's good techno music even, though it's
Mhm.
sometimes hard to find. Um,
Sprockets, touch my monkey.
yeah, so all different kinds, I'd say, but I definitely like heavy bass music, like you would say.
Okay.
Yeah, deep dubstep,
You like
psychedelic,
Scream?
trance, some of it. Scream?
Scream with a
Oh, with a
K.
K, with a K. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, with a K. Yes,
Rusko
yes,
back in the
yes.
day.
Yeah,
Dubstep
that,
used to be really good right at the beginning, and
no,
now it's
no, and
like,
the
what
thing,
the
no,
fuck?
no, 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 no. That's the thing. I always just sorry, just brief interjection, which has to be explained
It's
for that
fine.
genre, because modern dubstep has many different flavors, and there is still this type of old school in super amazing, very creative forms with elements from all over, the known world, that is really sophisticated and has
Mhm.
complex patterns and styles and so on. but that has nothing to do with the dubstep that got popularized in 2008 by Skrillex. You know,
I was
and
about to say
that's
the
just the
laser
veneer
dinosaurs.
that was put over it. Yeah. So
Mm.
yeah,
That's typically what happens, right? Like the artists that make it popular don't necessarily do it justice.
at least in this case, it's definitely true. And and it's always the same problem with labeling. When you label
Mhm.
something a certain way, and then the differentiation gets lost, or just the content is exchanged while the label stays the same suddenly,
Yeah.
and then people are confused, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why there's so many music genres.
Yeah, by now, yeah.
Mm.
Although I have to say, I mean, I don't know what music you listen to currently, or if you even answered that already, or didn't catch it. But there is many different variants now, many of which, especially with like they call it global bass, and there's certain labels, where I literally thought to myself, maybe 15 years ago, I could imagine this type of music. And then a few years
Mhm.
later, people actually produce that type of music, and I was quite happy about that.
Nice. That's
She
very
only listens
cool.
to Garth Brooks. Clearly, no, I'm kidding. It's like all I listen to is Garth. What kind of music do you like? I mean, we can shift out of the art stuff, unless
Yeah.
there's stuff about your career in art that we haven't touched on, because there's a lot to it.
I mean, there's a ton, but no, music I like a variety of things. I'd lean more towards instrumental. I find vocals really distracting. They either break my focus or just I find a lot of times vocals can kill the song. It's like this would have been so much better without these lyrics or without this voice or whatever it might be. I'm really like sensitive to it.
Now I'm
So
like,
I
oh
listen.
god, Beck is gonna fuck with you because all he does is like
No, Becca's
lyricism.
no, but his lyrics are really like cryptic and intriguing, and his voice is not I don't know, unsettling or anything like that.
So
I
it's
don't know.
not like
I'll
on
listen.
modern trap hip hop. I mean, I would never listen this to myself. I have a friend who's more into that culture, and they're literally, they always say, oh, the individuals that maybe are above 20 or whatever, they look down upon the cultural musical choices of the younger generation.
Oh,
But
yeah.
here, it's really like you can't even tell what they're saying. They have no skill. Then they're not actually rapping in terms of hip hop.
Yeah.
And some of the beats are okay, but mainly it just really all sounds pretty demonic, like outright.
It's a
Yeah.
Xanax overdose with a
Exactly.
vocoder.
Xanax and
Yeah.
whatever, this lean, what is it again? This whatever
Scissor?
they drink. No, it's syrup or whatever, incredible.
Oh, like codeine?
Exactly right.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
The purple stuff. I have never
Yeah.
fucked with that. I think back in the day they used to put heroin in it and people would get addicted to it. I mean, codeine I think is like an opiate, so it's like I'm gonna
Yeah.
get like zonked out here. Fun times. I like stimulants more, like psychedelics, not so much that. In any event,
I like none.
clean and sober. I mean, you could say whatever
Yeah.
you want. Raphael knows the only reason we even met was because I posted up a DMT trip report somewhere. It was like, oh my god.
Okay. I was gonna ask how you guys know each other.
Yeah, basically, Jim, who's
Fifth in America.
oh, now maybe he was back or not, but he got stuck. Back here he is. Yeah, basically, Jim posted that, and I just reached out because I guess I was interested in the overall topic, and it was quite fascinating what he reported. Also, not necessarily, or maybe by now we'll figure out how it conformed to the whole Egyptian theme that you experienced from a Christian background, right? And then we just started talking, and then after a few years, we started doing the podcast. So yeah.
Cool.
Whenever I was tripping, he would talk to me about Bashar. Like I'd be on acid, I'd be like,
Okay.
Raphael, I'm tripping, and he's like, let's talk about angels or New Age or whatever we would talk about. It was just
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Yeah, he was a fun source for novelty. Let's put it that way, because that's shit I haven't looked into. Anyway,
Novelty.
I love how it clicked out when we talked about drugs. You can be in America, North America. I guess you're North American. In the US of A, we have something called pleading the fifth, which is like I don't want to incriminate myself, so you don't have to say anything. But I'm curious.
Mm.
You were saying you don't do drugs,
No.
which is good. I mean, cool. Props. You can do this sober. You can raw dog life. That's very good. I don't smoke or anything anymore. Have you ever tripped or anything like that, or is that just something not on your docket?
Not
You complete
really,
this
no.
list. Yeah, I was like, trip
Yeah,
on mushrooms before you die, at least, for fuck's sake. Have a human experience.
I've had very limited experiences, and it's like mostly high school when peer pressure was a big part of it.
Like people like me
So,
saying, you gotta try it. You're like, okay. Whoops.
yeah.
I mean, this could segue nicely. So, in what way would you say, just from yourself? Because I've had several friends report this to me, after some time, and they said like, yeah, actually when using this or that, mainly with whatever psychedelic mind expanding substances, they say, well, actually I operate in a similar way in regular life anyhow. And I can also relate to that. And then, or some people feel, for me, life already is psychedelic or intense enough,
Mhm.
or I can sense so much already. I know why I don't want to, boost that capacity even more, even though in some
Mhm.
ways I would agree, I guess, especially mushrooms have a old ritual heritage as well. And there must be a reason why, they grow all around us, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so how would you relate to that? Because especially with art, one type of art I really like is visionary art, which of course, let's just
Okay.
say is heavily inspired by these things. It's like religious art, but made in a modern way, let's say, or spiritual
Mhm.
art, right?
Like Alex
So
Gray kind of stuff.
yeah, like
Mhm.
anything you see behind me, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about that art style, maybe, is a question, and also how do you relate to this idea of, I don't know, pattern recognition and different type of
Mhm.
perception, because that's of course all quite relevant to being an artist or having your own art style.
Yeah. I find that kind of style fascinating, and I'm in awe of it. I I definitely feel like I've never felt like a real pull towards any sort of substances, even ones that are, connected more to an actual ritual, like psychedelics and things like that. Especially as I get older, there's less and less of me that is interested in that or even feels like I would benefit from it. Um, and a big part of that is because of like life. I don't want to say I'm at that level already in my daily life, but I feel like there's potential to get to that through other ways. And
Like
I'd
holotropic
rather,
breathing or that kind of stuff.
yeah, I think
No, and
for
who
me,
even says that an
there's
altered state is superior to a regular state? It always depends what your regular state is, because for many people, these things are like
it's
breakout
true.
experiences
It's
because
so
their life
different.
and their psyche is so rigid that they wouldn't know what else to do. And someone
Mm-hmm.
else who's already malleable, I think also that's why they call it mushroom,
Mm.
just an aside, for them, they integrated that aspect, and there is not necessarily that much of a need or motivation, or even if you would want to put it on a scale, benefit in terms of perception levels by doing it a lot. Whereas other people, they're so encrusted, they would need all kinds of different therapy and sound healing and I don't know what to even get to
Mm-hmm.
that state. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it really varies depending on the person, and for me, it's just never felt like the right thing.
I
So,
can respect that to a degree.
totally
I'm still
different.
like, man, everyone's got to try acid at one point in their life. For fuck's sake, this stuff is
To a
great.
Yeah.
degree. But so no, basically what I'm more curious about, because for me, of course, these
Mhm.
things and much of art, of course, is inspired by psychedelics. From what I understand, even much of microelectronics and so on wouldn't exist without that. And 95% of the
Okay.
albums, right? But what I'm
Yeah.
more curious about is this whole idea of the perception, or to what extent some people deliberately, for example, make psychedelic art. Your art here
Mhm.
is very stylish in a particular way, which is just a particular style, or I'm not even sure what I'm asking. Maybe hmm. I
Do you
mean,
drink
Jim has
coffee before you paint? Is what he's
yeah.
saying. No, I'm
Oh
kidding.
well, maybe I don't know. No, I
Total
don't.
joke.
No, no,
Well,
no.
I think the stuff that I create it lacks depth. There's not that type of deep expression or exploration in it. And part of that is because, like, the examples you see are, client
Corporate.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But another
Right. You
part of
actually
it
you
too
actually
is,
explained part of that already. Yes.
yeah. So um, another part of it too is the things that really excite me are not, at least in terms of visual creation, the things that I want to create or explore are not necessarily related to that type of realm. I feel like
Right. Makes sense.
musically, I could explore that and express that. It to me, it doesn't feel like something that I can express through the visuals that I want
I
to
like,
create.
not to interrupt you, Raphael, scrolling through your website. I love how you posted almost like a Pinterest or something, the elements that you incorporated,
Oh,
because that is that is bridging the gap. I mean, to me, that's psychedelic. It's like, all right, she took these images and this is how they've gone together. Because I was gonna be like, white squirrel, what's the deal there? Well,
Oh,
I
that's
now
the
understand.
Toronto reference. That's the Trinity Bellwoods albino squirrel. Which maybe albino is a taboo term now. Forgive me.
Dude,
That's not
you
politically
Canadians, oh my
correct.
god. It's like
Oh,
no, you don't. I'll take the bullet. All albino squirrels and others, you can send mail to me, I guess. Um, so I'm curious, whether you, how would I put it? Where do you, if you could project where you want your art to be going or your creativity to be going, given that you didn't expect murals to happen, given that
mhm.
it's been a long and winding road. Um, what are some domains that you want to tap into that you just haven't yet? Like,
Yeah.
caricatures or like whatever kind of art. I'm just
I
curious.
did that when I was younger, though. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, I really, I want to explore perfume, but through a visual lens. That's a project that I've had on the back burner for like 7+ years now. And I've gradually been chipping away at it, but
When you
it's
say
tough.
perfume, I don't think you're making a new label for Coco Chanel #5. It sounds like
No.
you're going to be trying to do a synesthetic kind of thing more.
Yes, exactly. Um, so just kind of interpreting what that smell, something that you can't communicate, like you have to be physically in the vicinity of it to experience it. It's not like something visual or auditory. Um, it's this very elusive thing, and it's interpreted so differently depending on who's experiencing it. So part of it would be um, focusing on specific fragrances because I'm very into niche perfume. Not so
Shocker.
much.
You strike me as a very niche perfume kind of chica. Not in a bad way. I'm just like
Um,
berets and Coco
I know,
Chanel.
I know.
Yeah, it's all good.
I actually don't know much about Chanel fragrances.
That's the only one I know of. I don't. I wear fucking essential oils and I don't
That's
rock that stuff like deodorant.
great.
Or I rock deodorant. I don't rock cologne particularly. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I know there's within like the past decade, maybe decade plus, there's been just this huge surge in niche fragrance brands. There's so many different creators. A lot of them are self-taught, just creating such interesting fragrance compositions that they don't smell like anything that you would smell in a department store. And so that really intrigues me. So over the years, it's not a cheap hobby to have because perfume is very expensive. So it's been a very gradual thing of just like sampling things and building a small, humble collection of perfumes. But I want to communicate them through visuals. So, like breaking down the notes that are in them that make up that composition. So, in a way, like visually organizing the information of them, because that excites me more than like self expression, like editing and organizing. That I feel like I have endless motivation for. Um, but then also creating my own visual interpretation of what I experience or how I would represent that fragrance. But it's a lot of work. So
Sounds like it. 7 years is a
only
long.
like,
The
well, and
Beatles
it's not
were a
like I've
band
been
for
working
7
on it
years.
consistently. It was just in the back of my head, and it would kind of run in the background. And then every now and then, when I have time, I chip away at it. But yeah, and it could be this ongoing like database of perfume.
It's very
I don't know.
interesting.
I don't know what it's going to turn into.
Just to
Well,
understand
yeah.
what it actually is. So are these like, because that's what I really like, are these like essential oil compositions? Or because I just notice completely different, I guess, realms of what a perfume could actually be.
Oh, certainly. I think the ones I'm focusing on, they're not strictly essential oils. They are a mix, depending on the perfumer and the brand. They are a mix of natural and synthetic ingredients, which I find very interesting because the way things are composed to smell, like what notes or ingredients are used to create a smell that's totally different, is just fascinating. And
It's
there are
witchcraft.
perfumers out there who play with that. Like there's a perfume out there by perfumer Filippo Sorcinelli. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but I think it's called Rosa Negra, and
The
it's
black rose.
it's a rose fragrance, but there's not a rose note in it. I think there's like peach and other things, but chemically combined, they mimic a rose. So things like that really excite me.
That reminds me a little of the concept of, I'm sure you've seen it on Instagram and stuff, where people have like art, you see it straight ahead from one angle, and it's like, oh, it's this, and then you look at the
Yes.
side, it's like that is a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with that. It's like it's a total perspectival.
Oh yeah.
Pucker.
There's a ton of art out there like that. There's a lot of street artists who do that, like the sidewalk drawings, where you maybe you're talking about something a little different, but where you only see the full image once you're at a certain angle.
Right. A little different, more like it's
Yeah.
like found objects or whatever. It's like if you look at it, it's like this is a pile of junk, and if you get in a certain spot, it's like it's
Oh,
Mona
okay.
Lisa or whatever, and it's like what
Yeah.
the heck?
Okay.
It sounds like you want to do a
I see
similar
where
thing
you're
with olfactory kind of touring, essentially,
going.
where you're going to be. It is funny because we're kind of getting to a like a solve and coagula, right? The whole like alchemist mantra. To solve it, you have to like break it down to constituent parts, which it sounds like that the black rose or whatever, I forget what you said it was called. Um, that it's like it's nothing of it, but when you get it together, it is the essence of the other thing, approximately, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's this mix of something very linear and something very abstract, like breaking down the actual ingredients and even focusing on the sources of these ingredients and like the real world information or how it's composed, and then the abstract experience of what it is like, to subjectively smell this fragrance. And fragrances will have like a story. Not everyone, but like, there's the top, middle, and base notes. So those evolve over the period of time that you're wearing it. So that's another aspect of it.
I didn't realize it was that sophisticated, actually.
Oh,
Like, now that
yes.
you're saying, it's like, I wouldn't have thought that there's, like, it's almost
There's,
like, fireworks where certain kind of chemicals last longer in the air or whatever's going on.
yes.
That makes sense now that you've said it, but I never have had that thought process about, uh, scents before, where it's like, oh, there's
Mhm.
different, like, half-lives, basically,
Mhm.
of odors.
It's a fascinating world.
You gotta keep up with that project for real, girl. Like, that's very unique, A, and B, it sounds like something you're interested in, actually, like, it's a pet project, so keep feeding
Yes.
that Tamagotchi, and it won't die, and, you'll be happy.
Gosh, you're bringing
I
back
just I
trauma.
yeah, I have, like, one other random question, basically, but we could start kinda winding it down.
Okay.
Rafa, if you got any questions, Avi. Uh, you do a lot of scripting, it seems, with the graphic design. What and this is so random considering all we've talked about. What kind of fonts do you prefer? And, like, have you ever made a font? That's a weird way to put it.
Oh, no, I've done like lettering. So
Mhm.
like created a word in a specific style that's not an actual font. But to actually like design and build a font is a lot of work. I like to do it properly. Like it's very mathematic and there's so much that goes into it. Like the way all the letters have to be proportioned so that they look even visually, but they're not like mathematically. They're all their own specific measurements. Um, so no, I'll save the font making for the experts. But I I'm not really sure what I like in fonts. I actually there's a lot of really cool stuff from like the turn of the century, like late Victorian era. There's a lot of interesting. I have like some specimen books and whatnot.
Not
Um,
surprised. In that
yeah,
library, it's like, I've got
yeah, exactly.
books from the era that I love. That's what's up. I
um,
was just curious because it seemed like you had, with the stenciling, especially the Holy Mountain thing, it was like you've gone into the design element of it. But now that you're saying it, I don't know anything about font creation. It seems like it would probably be problematic. I just saw the other day a meme showing, like the mouse pointer, like on a Windows. I'm on a Windows.
yeah,
Um, it's not actually even. Like you would think it's like symmetric in such a way that
yeah.
it's like actually appropriate, and someone drew a line. And it's like it doesn't add up right, and it's like it shatters shatters one's psyche. It's
That's
kind of
a
one of those things.
perfect example. So much of it is just illusion. Sorry, I see someone in the comments. Any tips on transferring to digital from paper, or just throw yourself into it? Digital to paper, I've just typically done it in a really like analog way of if I'm sketching something on paper, I take a photograph of it with either my phone or my iPad, and then put that in the digital program that I'll be using, like Adobe Illustrator or Procreate or Photoshop. I use those for different types of purposes. Like Photoshop and Procreate are better for getting like a painterly look, which is work that I've been doing lately that's not on my Instagram. But yeah, just using a photo, and then you can set that layer, because everything in those programs is done in layers. Set that layer to like a 50% opacity or whatever you need, and have that over top of your drawing layer, and just draw around whatever you are copying from your photograph. So, and then you'll be able to see it through the transparency. And then once you don't need that reference anymore, then you can go. And there's so many different ways to do it, though. And you're welcome. Sorry, they said thank you. Yeah, there's so many different ways to do the technical things. That's a whole other.
It's a workshop you should host or something like that.
Yeah, well,
Straight up,
I'm
make a
still
Patreon
learning so
fucking thing and
much.
you can do it.
Maybe.
So something are there any comments or ideas, anything we didn't touch on? We're kind of rounding out the hour here.
Yeah,
So is there
feedback.
anything that we didn't touch that you want to talk about? We'll get you back on here at some point because you're cool. Maybe you and Andreas and me and Raphael can shoot the shit sometime. But yeah, is there anything that we didn't touch upon that you're like, oh, go to this, check out this site? I think we got your website and your LinkedIn and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
maybe we covered everything and it's all good. I just wanted to make sure if there's any even sentiments outside of, that you're like, oh, here's an idea. It's kind of like wrap it up how thou wilt in whatever way you want. There's no wrong way.
Oh man.
Oh, you seem like you're under pressure. I'm just making sure the guest,
Yeah.
got their coat kind of thing.
I don't know. There's been a lot of people who've helped me along the way. So
Shout out.
shout out to everybody in my life.
Y'all know who
Friends,
you
family,
are.
partner, everyone. Yeah. So it's definitely not something that's easy to do solo, and I don't know, it takes a lot of work to pursue like a creative path. I don't know. It's not easy, depending on how you're doing it, but yeah, it's like this all the time. So
Well,
I
your
don't know.
son.
That's not really a good way to leave it off.
No, it's totally
Sounds
fine.
quite
I mean, geez,
negative.
It takes determination, that's for sure. I
Yeah,
definitely agree
yeah.
with you.
your sun is conjunct to fucking North Node in Aries 12th house. Like you are here to be a pioneer of the self. Never doubt that. And it's funny because I've been pulling, not pulling, but these teas, Yogi teas. Shout out Yogi tea.
That's right.
They have little quotes on them, and this is so for you and me and everybody, but really for you, especially with Aries North Node conjunct Chiron for everybody. But you are in the midst of that soup yourself, my dear. So just you're feeling it. It says, be fearless. Know that all will be provided at the right time. So I think your story is one that shows just showing up and being yourself, and even when you don't go to class and you don't get credit, like it all works out in the end. So
Yeah, it feels
yeah.
like a GPS. Like it'll just keep rerouting you. You'll get
Yes.
there.
That's what's up. Well,
So,
Raphael, any last thoughts?
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you
oh,
for your
thank you guys for
insights.
having me.
For
And
sure. Your team rabbit hole as fuck. I knew it. As soon as I saw your art, I was like, you know what? You're
Oh,
cool. Like let's chat. So I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
you giving us your energy and time. Thanks for, giving us 2 hours. And guys, check out her website. If you're in Canada, shit, if you're anywhere and you want a mural and you fly this girl out, she'll probably do it. So hit her up, get
Vinyl
going
is
on that.
cheaper.
Say what now?
It's a vinyl is cheaper.
Vinyl is cheaper. Maybe there's the answer.
But if you've got the
But
money, sure.
yeah,
Splurge.
your work is good. Keep it up, and like really, it is skilled
Thank
stuff. It's
you.
very beautiful. So good on you.
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Stephanie, and thanks everyone for watching. Enjoy yourselves.
Adios.